Corrupted? What do you mean corrupted?
Been manipulated
By who?
By NASA.
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of Skeptic Smash Talk. I'm your host, Jason Jones, and joining me once again is my very special co-host, Andi, who isn't quite yet back from yoga yet, but it's okay, she's only minutes away. So in the meantime, let me remind you that this show does have an explicit material warning, so please be aware of that and remember that sometimes headphones are a good thing, especially when there are little humans about. Also, if you haven't heard it yet, I released a short 12-minute episode late last week to finish off some politics stories that weren't quite ready for the last main show. So if you haven't heard it yet, go check that out. Also, I have now started posting new episodes to YouTube, just the audio, there's no video there yet, as for some people it's easier to listen to shows from there, especially on older mobile devices, as essentially what you can do is turn down the video quality right down to 144p without any real effects on the audio quality, therefore reducing any bandwidth problems. And again, as I've said in the past, if you have any particular podcast app that you prefer and this stream is not showing up on that, please let me know. It's literally a matter of me just finding the setting in my feed to allow it to go to wherever you prefer to listen to. But also, you can listen directly from the show's website at skepticsmashtalk.com. From the front page there, you can find the last 3 main shows. And if you hit the blog link up the top left-hand corner, you can find all the past shows there with show notes. And there's occasionally an actual blog post there thrown in for good measure. And as always, if you want to get in touch, you can find all the contact information there also at skepticsmashtalk.com. Finally, if you want to help support the show, please go to iTunes or your favourite podcatcher app and leave a 5-star review and continue to share the show details with all of your friends. Now, all that being said, Andy's finally made it back so we can get on with the show. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare who?
Did you know Shakespeare coined the knock, knock joke?
Is that a joke?
No, it's true.
No, I mean, is this your joke?
No, Shakespeare coined the knock, knock joke.
Right. Oh, is that a fun fact?
That's a fun fact.
Oh, right, okay.
Do you know what else he coined?
Go on.
Playing fast and loose. Because you were about to say...
You're playing fast and loose for the word fun fact, aren't you?
Okay, well, that's enough fun for today. Let's talk about the Burkini.
Oh.
So you saw that in the news?
Yeah, I saw that in the news. I've seen it in the papers. I've seen it everywhere.
As a person who's not a man, what's your thoughts on this?
I just can't imagine somebody coming up to me on a beach telling me to strip off my clothes to wear less.
The mortality police have gone full circle, haven't they?
Oh, it's unbelievable. You think many years ago it was shocked if people showed their ankles.
Yeah.
And now we're basically saying, strip off your wetsuits. I want to see you in a bikini. Oh, I saw this article and there was this reporter interviewed a French, do you know what, I might be lying, he might not have been a French guy, but this guy on the French beach, and he's a big guy, not necessarily been to a gym in the last 10 years.
So, not unlike me.
Yeah, big beer gut and all that.
Yeah.
Wearing the tiniest budgie smugglers. And they asked him, was he offended by the Burkini? And he said yes.
You're joking.
No, seriously, he was offended by the Burkini. I'm thinking he probably needs to think about what he's saying, do you know?
Yeah.
But I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. I'm not quite sure how that we've got so et up that a piece of clothing has, decided if somebody's...
Now, there's photos obviously going all over the internet, and one that's sort of doing the rounds is probably from the 30s or 40s, where there's somebody actually measuring the length of somebody's bathing suit, because obviously back then, that they could only be so far above the knee and that sort of bullshit.
Yeah. I can't, some people argue for this, is that when we go abroad and we go into maybe Muslim countries, we can't show as much flesh. We have to cover up on their beaches, for example, topless, etc. But I kind of think that's a bit of an awkward argument.
But that's a religious acceptance thing. There's no religion that says that you should be wearing a budgie smuggler or a G-string on a beach. And this is so if a man is wearing a wetsuit or think about a kid, like we talked about this before, the twins, when they go to the beach, they're fully covered up, and just about every pale-skinned kid in Australia will wear like a full body, what do we call, rash suits is what they were called. And they're really no different to the burkini. But if you've got brown skin or you look like you're a Muslim, all of a sudden you've got, and this photo that's in all the newspapers, there's 4 armed police officers surrounding a woman, forcing her to take her clothes off.
Did you hear about the guy? He's a very rich, a very wealthy man, and he's actually paying their burkini fines. Yeah,
so and there was one of the courts have turned around. They only did one, so they've set a test case, but one of the courts said that the law is illegal. They can't enforce this law, but each of the it's not on every beach in France, but there's I think there's 10 or 14 or something.
Regions, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but all the mayors of each of those regions have turned around and said they're ignoring the courts. This is just bigotry. It's nothing more than bigotry.
There's not one part of me that would walk down a beach and be offended by seeing somebody fully dressed up in a burkini, but secondly, not one part of me would have a bit of fear that they're walking around with a bomb vest on or about to stab me just because of what they're wearing. Yeah. I don't understand the point of the law.
No, and I'm going to do a story later on. When I get time later on, there was 3 more Muslim women, 2 women and a man who were kicked off a plane in England for basically one of them sent a message on WhatsApp app, and some idiot decided that they were sharing or they were sending ISIS.
Oh crap! You're kidding me!
And you keep talking. I'll show you the image of these 3. It's just extraordinary.
Is this another in-flight
another one
out?
On EasyJet?
Seriously?
Have a look at those 3.
Oh dear God!
What part of those 3 look like they're fucking terrorists? I mean,
what does a terrorist look like? I mean, are we expecting them to walk around in camps and stuff? To be fair, but they've done nothing wrong.
No,
this is somebody
they're
who's decided that they obviously look like not of a religion, maybe Muslim, but somebody's decided to take a dislike to them.
Yeah.
And create a reason to have them kicked off the flight. That has got to be the case, surely.
To make it worse, guess what country they're from? Well, they were all born in England. They were all born in the UK. They live in North London somewhere.
Don't know.
Their parents are Indian.
Oh, dear God.
It's just fucking blows my mind.
It's ignorance, isn't it?
But
ignorance.
We go back to the bikini. So we've got...
Do you know what? I'm so tempted to wear a bikini just for the sake of
Well, people have been buying them. Sales have gone absolutely
They've got some really
apeshit.
nice ones.
Yeah.
Do you know what? If I thought that the burkini would have existed, I might not have tried to hard on my diet before our holidays because,
I wish I bought stocks in them. Yeah. But again, going back and this other story, the EasyJet story. Now, can you imagine? So that photo again of the woman on the beach, and apparently she had a kid with her. But so there's that photo. There's 2 things I want to talk about with that photo. Firstly, you can't tell me that photo is not going to appear in the ISIS magazine. And by the way, ISIS have a fucking magazine. That just does my arse in. But that photo is going to appear in the ISIS magazine. They're going to have words along the lines of, this is how the West treat our women.
Yeah.
We point guns at them because we don't want them wearing the bags that we force them to wear.
We've just continued giving them material to spread hatred and do what they do, haven't we? We've just actually fed that machine, really, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Ridiculous.
But the other thing is now the French authorities have turned around and said that they're going to charge anyone that shares that picture on social media.
Oh, yeah. And I'm like, you're not going to have a lot of people sharing that.
No. And the thing is, they're nearly right. They are nearly, and I shared the photo, and let me explain why. So they're saying that the photo is defamatory. People can't share that photo because it's defamatory. Unless you edit a photo, by definition, it can't be defamatory.
Yeah,
it's an exact. It's a facsimile of what happened.
But surely that's just them having some admission to the fact that their law is so crazy by them saying that.
Exactly. Now, the reason we shouldn't share that photo, and I'm being serious now, I don't think, and I deleted where I did share it, is it does show the faces of it's blurred out the face of the woman, and that's fine, but it shows the pictures of the police. And what I don't want is those police being targets by anybody. Terrorist related or not, they shouldn't be targeted for just simply doing their job. Whether we agree that they should be doing that job or not, they shouldn't be targeted. So we shouldn't be sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
But the other thing is, so remember the Charlie Hebdo attack? That was probably, I don't want to be wrong on this, but I think that was the first attack in France by ISIS. That was about Charlie Hebdo, the magazine, sharing pictures, making pictures that apparently were defamatory against Islam.
Yeah.
So the fucking fromage-eating surrender monkeys need to sort their shit out and start acting a little bit more like humans as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so I must apologise and also thank long-time listener and fellow veteran Matthew for reminding me that I haven't done any of the analysis of the Skeptics Creed for a while. And somebody else also reminded me that I haven't talked about how I managed with all the craziness that is my brain. And it's not that I have forgotten either of these. What had happened was that I had a few pre-recorded segments and I found something in one of the files that was annoying the shit out of me. I thought that I had just deleted that one file. But instead, I trashed everything. I didn't realise for a while, so I couldn't even recover it. And what really pisses me off is that I never normally ever delete any record. But I was so pissed off at the time, I didn't even think. Let me explain what happens. So one of the reasons I initially thought about doing podcasts was to help me with my speech. And I'd be very surprised if anybody actually notices, but I have a pretty bad set of speech impediments. But after years of pretty good therapy, I can cover it up quite nicely. And, well, like I say, nobody can really tell, but what makes it hard for me is that I have both a lisp and a stutter, and adjusting the way I speak for both are completely different. Lisping is more about tongue and mouth control, where the stutter for me, anyway, is controlled by breathing and trying not to overthink, mostly about stuttering. Like I say, nobody, well, as far as I can tell anyway, actually knows. And I doubt my family, when I was young, even noticed, especially my gestation assistant, as she was more worried about her other animals to worry about the human ones. But Andy knows when I'm struggling or when I need to work a little bit harder to control it. Anyway, but as a general rule, I don't get into long-winded conversations or conversations where I need to put a lot of thought into my vocabulary. I had noticed that my impediments were starting to sneak back in again. I needed some more practice. And this isn't something that I'm ashamed of. It is what it is. It's just another little test of my extraordinary brain. But what's even stranger now is because I've had to deal with it and adjust my speech for so many years, I've become hyper aware of it, and I'll never really be able to do the seashells tongue twister thing, and Peter Piper can fuck off with his peck of capsicums, but I sometimes hear a little stutter or a lisp where nobody else hears it. And when that happens, I get so pissed off with myself. And I know it's irrational, but when it happens, I remember all the bullying and bullshit that I put up with as a kid. Anyway, that's a very long way of explaining why I cracked the shits and deleted more than I needed to delete because I said she rather than C one day. And while we're on the subject of speech therapy, initially I wasn't taught by an actual therapist. And this is probably the most important part of the story. In fact, I didn't actually see a therapist until I joined the army, and then he was just a general shrink. But before that, it was my drama teacher in school that helped me along. Now, he left the school under a bit of a cloud, and maybe one day I'll go over that, but he's well and truly long passed away, so I'll probably just let that be whatever it is. And I only really mention that part of the story, but because, despite his gross flaws, he probably is one of the very few people that helped me be who I am today. So, what happened was that he noticed that when I was acting or word remembering, my speech was fine. but in conversations in between, I would revert back to poor speech. And there was something else that he pointed out, and it was that if I made a note of something that I needed to remember or talk about later, I didn't stutter or lisp when I was retelling that note. It was like it was another script. So what he had me do was pretend that whenever I was having a conversation that I was on the stage. I even had a set of scripts for conversations stored away in my brain for future use. And I guess that's why sometimes the energy in my voice makes Brian Blessed sound like Minnie Mouse. And while we're on that, in the movie Flash, Brian Blessed never bellowed out, "Gordon's alive," as everybody seems to remember it. He did it more of a way of a proposition than a bellow statement. This is how he actually said it.
"Gordon's alive?"
Anyway, so that's a very long-winded excuse for the hiatus in the Skeptics Creed, and a brilliant segue into the next part of the creed. Okay, so far we have covered credulity and fortune cookies. The next part, so my whole life has been about mummy issues, or as I refer to her, the gestation assistant, who, as it happens, did nothing but babble on with bullshit, and my shrink actually did have a couch, and we even tried hypnosis too. Surprise, surprise, no effect at all. Which just leaves us with the next bit, double bubble, toil and trouble, which, as I'm sure you all remember, comes from that Scottish play. Anyway, to the actual words, double toil and trouble, not double bubble, a very common but inexcusable mistake, comes from the witch's chant in Macbeth. Now, something that I think is important to know about the story of Macbeth is at the same time that it was written and first performed, James VI, and I say six because we're talking about Scotland at the moment, when we talk about him being England, King James that is, he's James I, and that's so confusing, I know. Anyway, James VI was personally involved in the witch trials as he thought that he had been cursed. And we all know that when the omnipotent get scared, they prefer extreme and irrational actions. Ergo, it's no surprise that King James VI, and eventually the first, and that is the correct order, again very confusing I know. Anyway, as King James VI, he set up a royal commission to hunt down and eradicate witches from his realm, with strong recommendations for torture when dealing with the subjects, because we all know how very successful torture is, don't we? And that's most likely why Shakespeare described the witches to be gross and haggard to appease not only his king, King James VI, but King James I as the patron of Billy Shakespeare's acting company. And it wasn't until Aaron Spelling took the hags and turned them hot again did witches have any sex appeal. But back to Shakespeare for a moment and his witches. The grotesque witches was not the only meme that Shakespeare was responsible for. And I use meme in its original manner, that is, as an element of a culture or a system of behaviour passed on from one individual by another by imitation or other non-generic means. Not as a picture of a kitten with some not very funny remark overlaid on it for you to post on Facebook to see if you have any real sympathetic friends. No, Billy the Shaker was also responsible for Richard III's Hunchback, and many, including myself, will argue that he gave us the roots of modern English, with thousands of new words credited to Shakespeare, such as advertising and arouse, accused, addiction, amazement, and assassination. Or for samples from the other 25 letters of the alphabet, he gave us barefaced, champion, discontent, elbow, frugal, gossip, hobnob, impede, jaded, language, moonbeam, negotiate, Olympian, puking, rant, which is one of my favourite, swagger, tranquil, undress, vaulting, Wallace, and zany, just to mention a few. And I could do a full series on phrases first coined by Shakespeare, like Brave New World and Heart of Gold, or All That Glitters Is Not Gold, but I'll leave you with bated breath, which is another one of his, on that one. But how does all this link together? Well, what Shakespeare did better than anybody else had done before him, or probably will ever do for millennia to come, is the way that he would meter his sonnets and plays. And by this, I mean the pattern or the panter of how the words and lines were put together. If you take his sonnet, each of them has 14 lines. The first 12 lines are divided into 3 groups of 4, with the first and the third line rhyming and the second and the fourth line doing the same until we get to lines 13 and 14, which rhyme with each other. And this is true for all of about 3 or 4 of his sonnets. More importantly for me and this segment is that each of the 14 lines contain 10 syllables each. Again, a few but very few exceptions to this, but Billy used the 10-syllable format for his plays also. Now, we're getting very close to my point here. It's not funny, so hang in there, kitty. It's nearly over. Okay, so anyone that has had any speech or singing training will remember that the patter and the pattern is the key to just about everything. And by using 10 syllables, he opens up the full sentence or the phrase, which for people with compound speech impediments like mine can find nearly impossible to read. And so one of the tricks I was taught by my drama teacher was to breathe differently through the line. So normally a trained actor would breathe at the punctuation, but if I was to try that and try and read a 10-syllable line naturally and tried to breathe naturally, I wouldn't get through the line. And I don't remember if this was something that my drama teacher had come up with himself or if it was just a standard method of teaching at the time, but rather than try and breathe through the lines, I would take one rather massive breath and hold that all the way through the line. And what this did was give me enough air that I needed to get through that line, but also gave me something else to concentrate on rather than my voice, which, as a result, gave me a usable voice. But it wasn't until I joined the army that I realised how useful this training was. And by this time, I really didn't have any notable speech problems at all, unless I was stressed or panicked, which was rather quite handy, as bullying in the military is orders of magnitude worse than in school. But it's also very hard to give commands on parade ground if you are stuttering. And that's when I figured something else out. Having to hold my breath for 10 syllables or more meant that I was projecting my voice from my chest, not my throat, which gave me more depth and power in my voice and clarity without any impediment, which obviously gave me a shitload more confidence, which is fantastic in a theatre or a parade ground, but not so much in a small office or on the telephone or podcasting. Now, it may not stand out so much because of all the clever editing, but if you listen to my voice while I'm talking alone like now and compare it to when Andy's in the studio with me, it's quite different. Right now, I have the gain on my mic turned right down, which lets me push my voice quite hard. But if I was to talk at this volume with anybody else in the studio, my voice would bellow into their microphones. See if you can notice how different my voice is now compared to the start of the episode when Andy and I were chatting. Even my accent can be different, and there's a lot more inflection in my voice. But, as it is for every rule, there's an exception, which brings us all the way back to double, toil and trouble. This is an example of where Shakespeare breaks his own rules. So, remember I was talking about the sonnets? 14 lines of 10 syllables. This is called an iambic pentameter, and an iamb is a metric unit made up of an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. For example, from Sonnet 12, when I do count the clock that tells the time, the stressed syllables tell a story. I count clock tells time. But when Shakespeare used enchanted verses or rapid verses such as with his characters like Park and Oberon and the witches chant, he turned to a trochaic tetrameter, which is 8 syllables per line, but with the stressed syllable followed by the unstressed syllable, so the reverse of the iambic. And for reasons unknown, this simple reversal of the stressed syllable makes it nearly impossible for me to read unimpeded. I either find that I need to force an extra breath at the third metric, or I choke at the last one, which really sucks ass. And this means that the 3 hags can join the chick with the seashells and Peter Piper and his bucket of capsicums. And not that I ever plan to tread the boards anytime soon, but if I was ever to return, how good do you think I would be as Oberon, the king of the fairies?
So, Jason, there's one thing that's always as a really poor cook. How do you manage to cook for more than 2 people? I mean, we had 14 people around last weekend.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I have no idea of portion size for that number of people, no idea of how to kind of, because you cooked a few dishes, like what order to cook them and what can be cooked on the day, what can be pre-prepped. Because, I mean, I'm the type of person that would pre-prep fruit and see that go brown and dry and it's pointless to put out. So, I mean,
now
that amazes me.
What most people don't know, because I don't really talk about it, and our friends know, that when I was in the army, for part of the time in the army, I was a chef. So that kind of makes things easier for me. But I think I learnt in the army that I knew how to cook, not how to cook, which is the course. I think it was 12-week cooking course in the army. So that's not a lot of time to learn how to.
For us,
It's just so that. What did we have to eat? Let's talk about what we had to eat.
Well, you made fresh bread. There was a big basket of many different types of bread.
So let's start with the bread and baking. Now, I'm not the best baker, and I never actually make... before we start, let me just get one thing out of the way. Every time I say this is very easy, as I said, I was a professional chef for a long time, so I'm not trying to sound... When I say it is easy, I'm not trying to sound like it's easy for me or trying to show off or anything like that. It's just that when I think of the concept, I think it's easy. But bread is one of those things that you can't, if you stick to the basics, you can't fuck up bread. Baking in general, so baking cakes, to make a Victoria sponge, you have to be so precise with your measurements and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I remember making some as a kid, actually, and you have to weigh and measure everything.
Yeah, but when you make things like bread, so bread's been around for tens of thousands of years, basically. It's one of the first foods that we farmed for. So, I mean, my recipe for bread is essentially 500 grams of flour, and don't use normal, like, off-the-shelf flour. Like, no, you want to get what they call strong flour, or bread maker's flour. 500 grams of that, anywhere between 250 and 300 mils of sugar, some yeast, anywhere between 250 and 300 mils of water, a little bit of sugar, some yeast and some salt, and a little splash of olive oil. Mix it all together until it's smooth, and that's it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So we had, I think I did about 4 different types of bread. So basically the recipe stayed the same, and where I made the Italian style breads, that's a wetter dough, so there's a little bit more water in there and a finer flour.
See, that just petrifies me already. You've just added variables and making sure something that petrifies me already.
To make a loaf of bread, that's all. Forget about that last part, changing it around a little bit. Just to make that loaf of bread, you put all those ingredients together and away you go.
Do you think, though, because you've got some kind of scientific logic in your brain, that you have some logic whilst you're cooking?
Yeah. So I know that if so the sugar, you don't need, most bread recipes don't have sugar in them. And if I'm making the bread, if I'm putting everything together now to cook the bread in the next few hours, I generally don't put sugar in there. But if I'm trying to make a sourdough or something like that, or the Italian styles, because the dough rests for so much longer, what I want to do is actually I'm feeding the yeast. So the yeast are a fungus. That's what they are. They're a living organism that basically the yeast eat sugar and fart out CO2.
But now you just put me off making bread. Anyway, so we had bread, and then we had salad. I made the salad, actually.
You made the salad. High five the salad.
High five the salad. Yep. And then we had a gorgeous pasta dish, absolutely beautiful. I mean,
so with pasta, but again, these are things. So you see the likes of that bloody London twat. What's his name? Jamie Oliver. He makes things look so hard, but what he's doing, he's essentially making things simpler than the way I do it, but he makes it he makes it unaccessible for people. So for the pasta, you get the whatever ingredients you want in the pasta, soften them by cooking, mix in the pasta.
Yeah, but it's because the flavours, when I make pasta, it might taste like it's just lacking. I mean, that had no, like, I do a lot of tomato-based pasta.
Yeah.
I can't really go wrong with that because it's going to taste tomato-y based, and I just make sure I add some herbs and stuff. But that was a relatively plain pasta. It had, like, veg. I mean, it had artichokes, onion. I can't remember what else. Yeah,
so,
some green in there.
So what I put
spinach
in there, and
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a little bit of spinach and watercress, and that sort of green stuff you just put in last.
But what about I don't know where the flavour came from.
The flavour comes from my secret ingredient. Well, there's 2 distinct flavours in that dish that I made. So as I said, you just get whatever ingredients you want to put in there, your base ingredients is your onion, a bit of garlic, and whatever.
You just fry all that off.
Fry all that off, but I put in that fennel, which has got a really, really unique flavour, which now that's got a bit of an aniseed flavour, and you don't like aniseed as a rule.
That didn't taste aniseed,
but you're not
though,
tasting
when
the
you
aniseed.
No, I can smell it before you cook it,
Yeah.
but not in the actual pasta.
So that cooks, that aniseed, that raw flavour cooks out of the fennel, and you're left with it's an umami type flavour that comes out. But there's another secret ingredient. So I don't generally put salt in anything when I cook.
No.
What I do put in is lemon juice.
Is that why we've got 40 bottles of it?
Exactly. And lemon juice is one of the best flavour enhancers. It's so much better than salt, and obviously it's much better for
Yeah,
it.
I like to enhance food with red wine myself.
Well, yeah. But then, so talking about Jamie Oliver, he makes things look hard. So what he does is drowns everything in olive oil, which I try not to do. But when you're cooking so oil, especially olive oil, a good olive oil, it's got a brilliant, really fruity flavour profile again.
Yeah.
And people in the Mediterranean
adds to the flavour, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other food that we had. So we had you made a paella, and then you made pizzas.
Yeah. But
and they
before
were all
that,
on the day. I think,
let's stick with the simple stuff first. So there was a big tray of
roasted vegetables.
Roast veggies.
That was good.
And again, that was just whatever veggies in the oven with some really nice olive oil. I think I put some garlic and a lot of fresh herbs on top of that.
They were lovely.
Baked it, and I did the Jamie Oliver thing. It was served in the pan that it was cooked in.
Yeah.
And it's as simple. So the first few dishes that we had, your salad, the bread, the pasta, and the roast vegetables.
Yeah.
There's something not in any of those.
Yeah.
Which is meat.
Yeah.
And there was yourself and one other vegetarian. Out of the 14, 2 vegetarians.
And everybody ate it and never said there is no meat.
Exactly. And vegetables or vegetarian, no, not all vegetarian food, but that style of vegetarian food is so easy to make. Like I say, you just cut up the stuff that you need and cutting. So the preparation is, so I did most of the preparation the night before, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. Cutting all the vegetables up and everything. So it just made things a little bit simpler on the day. Yeah, I suppose your prep was spot on and organised.
Exactly, yeah. And then obviously to do that properly, you need the right tools for the job, which is sharp knives and all that sort of stuff. And what I find a lot of people do is spend a lot of money on knives where they really don't need to. So my knives are they come from a restaurant supplier, and basically, so the very expensive knives you buy from
the Jamie Oliver knives.
Yeah, they're high grade stainless steel knives, which is they look good, but they're a real bitch to sharpen. And then stainless steel doesn't stay sharp very well.
Yeah.
And if you get stainless steel hot, it gets bothersome and all sorts of stuff. Professional knives are high carbon stainless steel. So they're still stainless steel and they meet those hygiene standards, but they've got more carbon in them, which means if you don't look after them, they will get a little bit of rust on them. So you want to avoid that. But they do sharpen so much better. So, and a quarter of the price.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not allowed to use them.
And you're not allowed to use them.
Let the knife do the work. What the hell's that meant to bloody mean? It's not going to take itself off the magnet.
You're not supposed to use knives as hacksaws. So that's it. It is about that. But and I say it is not. If you've got the right tools, it's not hard to do, and you don't need to sit there like my dear mother-in-law and make everything absolutely identically cut and measured.
But my mum, she can't help it. Bless her. Her food is always lovely, but you can guarantee that it's the prettiest and the most evenly cut food.
Yeah. And then, so what else did we have?
Paella.
The paella. So that isn't one that's easy to make. And my paella is not actually a traditional paella. It's I don't think I've ever had.
I think it's just chicken and chorizo with paella rice and lots of flavour, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it's just one of those meals that I like. And
everybody else seems to like it too.
You throw all the ingredients in together, cook it all up. It doesn't matter what goes in there as long as it's things that you like. To be a paella, you've got to have the chorizo.
I was going to say, the chorizo gives it this flavour, really. I think if any absence of that, you'd want something like bacon, that's surely, or something a bit...
I can't imagine a vegetarian paella.
No, that's why you've never made me one.
No. But then we had the pizzas, which...
Again, I suppose you made the dough earlier on in the day, did you?
Yeah, early afternoon. You can't make pizza dough too early because it over ferments.
Yeah.
But again, so I worked in a pizza shop when I left the army. I actually owned a pizza shop. But the pizzas that we had were nothing like what you would expect. So not like a Domino's or a takeaway pizza, or for our friends in America, the whatever that thing is that they serve in New York, and even worse. Have you seen the Chicago pizzas? It's like
Chicago
a big
town.
No, an actual Chicago style pizza.
No.
It's like a lasagna,
Like a pizza pie.
Yeah, absolutely. But so we went to Italy a few months ago now, 3-4 months ago now, and we had pizza in the home of pizza. So I sort of ate a pizza a day, I think.
Yeah, that was your aim, wasn't it?
Well,
you succeeded.
It was homework. It was homework. So the pizzas that we had was just a very basic, really, really basic dough. Same recipe again, the half kilogram of flour, 300 mils, 250 mils of water and salt and yeast, and away you go. But on top, all we had was, I had some sliced salamis or whatever for you, and quite
mozzarella
often,
and tomato and
a little bit of mozzarella, some canned tomato drained because canned tomato is quite watery. Drain that out. A little bit of tomato on top. A little bit of mozzarella on top. Not big fat 4-inch piles thick of stuff.
No, it's actually better when it's not, because
Yeah.
I think because it's fresh anyway, you just get lovely flavours anyway, don't you? Without piling it on top with ingredients.
But the other thing, again, now this is where I've got an advantage with my very extraordinary brain, is that rather than sort of sit there and worry about how things, what order to do things, I can process everything in my head beforehand and actually walk through in my head everything from the preparation to the cooking and things like that. And because I've been doing it for so long, it's a little bit more natural for me.
And quite exhausting, though, I can imagine.
It is exhausting, but I walk through everything in my head, and I can actually picture. So if I'm cutting up vegetables to go in paella, I can actually think, well, I need 2 carrots, and then, so I'm putting some carrot in the roast vegetables as well. So while I'm cutting up, the diced carrots for the paella, I'll do some bigger chunks for the roast veggies and things like that. So it just becomes a lot easier to actually do. And it's probably one of the benefits of being autistic, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'd do a party differently. I'd say everybody...
Call it all in.
Everybody bring a dish with them. And mine would be like a platter from Subway or something.
Yeah. Oh, do you know what? That annoys the crap out of me when you have a party. So the running club Christmas party, and everybody's supposed to bring something from for the buffet.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody stops in and buys either cold chicken from the supermarket or...
Oh, but, some people just, like you say, they're petrified. They don't know where to start when they're feeding plenty of people, but...
Yeah.
So, hey-ho.
That's it. But people, so I've always had a big bee in my bonnet about cooking shows making things look so much harder than they actually are. Like putting too many ingredients in things and just making it seem difficult for people.
Yeah, and also calling things strange posh words.
Yeah, like what's that? That's quinoa. It's quinoa. It's not fucking quinoa.
Quinoa.
It's quinoa. It's as it's spelt.
Oh, we need to move on.
Anyway, I should have my own celebrity TV show.
Oh, that would be frightening.
That would be awesome, wouldn't it?
That would need a lot of editing.
Moving on. So this next story comes from just about everywhere, but mainly the Washington Post and NBC. And it's in relation to that brilliant doctor's letter that was publicised in December for Donald Trump. And thankfully it's come back into the limelight, as all went quite quiet there for a while. But then Dum Dum had a dig at Hillary and Rudy Giuliani, that same dumbass that said recently that there hadn't been any successful terror attacks in the United States before Obama took office, forgetting that on September 11, 2001, while Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York City, there was a massive terror attack in the United States, which started the war on terror. Anyway, Giuliani had started some conspiracy theories about Clinton's health. So, as per the rules of the game of politics, there was some return fire. Now, this is from the Washington Post. It reads, in an interview on Friday, Donald Trump's doctor finally spoke out about the letter that he had written for Loser Donald. Okay, I put in the Loser Donald part. NBC News tracked down Dr. Harold Bornstein, who said in the interview that he crafted Trump's doctor's letter only in about 5 minutes, declaring his patient healthier than all 43 American presidents, while a limousine waited impatiently outside for him to finish. Bornstein said, I thought about it all day, and at the end I get rushed, and I get anxious when I get rushed, so I try to get 4 or 5 lines down as fast as possible so that they'll be happy. I've got 5 minutes to sit right at this desk and write a letter while the driver waited for me. Now, I'll put a link to the interview so you can watch the video, because watching it will show more than listening will. But for now, just have a listen to what he has to say.
Is that the way that you write most of your medical letters?
No, but for Mr. Trump, I wrote that letter that way.
Did he ask you to describe it that way, or do you pick up his kind of language by spending time with him?
I think I probably picked up his kind of language and then just interpreted it to my own. I thought about it all day, and at the end, I get rushed and I get anxious when I get rushed, so I try to get the 4 or 5 lines done as fast as possible that they would be happy with.
Now, what is astonishing, and pardon the ad hominem, but how can anyone trust a doctor that looks like a cross between a hippie from that 70s show and Willie Nelson's pot dealer? Anyway, CNN Sanjay Gupta raised his own questions about the letter. All of the problems with the letter, and there are more than a few, the biggest may be the hyperbole. Doctors are trained to be circumspect and not draw conclusions that are supported by facts. Bornstein's letter, quite simply, didn't sound as if it were written by a serious-minded doctor who had given it any kind of thought that it warranted. And in his interview with NBC, Bornstein obviously seemed to confirm that it wasn't. The question is, what does it mean going forward? Now, the letter arguably is incomplete. As the New York Times had said, it contained no details about his heart rate or respiratory rate and cholesterol level or past medications or family history. And I don't bring this up to be nasty, but we know his brother had alcohol problems, which ultimately led to his death. And there are a few, and very few, pictures of Trump with glasses of wine and champagne. And given that he owns, or his family owns, vineyards, that's not a surprise. And there are old pictures of Trump in the wrestling with a can of beer. But being that this was the wrestling, it was obviously some sort of PR stunt, some sort of product placement. As it was very recently with his plate of Kentucky Fried Chicken. And that was brought up in this story too. He had said that he'd thought junk food was okay, and in an interview, he said that they were all okay and that he had Kentucky Fried Chicken just the other night. And he said that that wasn't the worst thing in the world. The problem is, Kentucky Fried Chicken is not too far from being the worst food in the world. But there was the photo of Trump digging into a bucket of chicken on his plane, and whilst the Twitter went absolutely apeshit about him eating his biscuit with silverware, no one seemed to ask why he was having a photo taken unashamedly, which was to promote KFC. So now the run for the election of the president of the free world is now a product placement opportunity. My question is will this arsehole sink to any depths to get money? Anyway, back to the letter. There was something else that had come out. Dr. Bornstein, MD, in his signature block identifies as Harold N. Bornstein, MD, FACG. The FACG means that he is signing as a fellow of the American College of Gastroenterologists. However, it seems that he hasn't been a member of that particular association for more than 20 years. Also in his signature block, he is signing on behalf of Lenox Hill Hospital Department of Medicine. It turns out that he only has admitting privileges at that hospital. So even if you believe that there was some sort of pressure on the doctor to write the letter for Trump, there is no reason for the misrepresentation of hospital or professional affiliation. Which leads me to some speculation. But first, a question. Why would somebody as apparently rich as Dum Dum go to a gastroenterologist for any normal checkup? And why would a doctor of any standing, even if faking a letter, not include the basics such as family medical history? We know his brother had an alcohol problem and that sadly killed him. His dad had Alzheimer's. His grandfather died suddenly of pneumonia, age 49. So, not including his grandfather, brother and father's medical history would normally be referred to on such a letter, as well as the basics like his blood pressure and his BMI, which looks like it's taken a massive hit from all that KFC, and his cholesterol, as already mentioned. So the question for me is, what does an unaffiliated hippie gastroenterologist on the Upper East Side of Manhattan that has anxiety issues when under pressure actually do for a living? And I don't want to cast any allegations because I have no proof, but I think if I was an up-and-coming junior DA or a New York City Medical Board examiner, I would be looking at Bornstein's prescribing habits. And by the demeanour in his interview, I somehow doubt that I'm the first to jump to this conclusion. So, Andrea.
Yeah.
I found a podcast the other day, which I think that you would enjoy, and it's called The Bob and Katie Show.
Oh, right, okay.
It's quite awesome, and it's really funny, actually. And I'll post the links to it with the show notes so everybody can check it out. But basically, it's a husband and wife team talking about their week for an hour or so.
Oh, God, can you imagine if we talked about our whole week?
Oh, God, no. No, anyway.
Couldn't relive it.
No. But I sent them a message because I actually had a similar thought. And I sent them a message because, so their show is basically like the start of our show with just talking about stuff. But, like, yeah, we couldn't do that for a full hour. But I thought it would be funny to do an episode together with them. So 2 Americans, 1 dumbass Aussie and an English woman. But as it turns out, the poor buggers have got young twins, which probably enough to fill anybody's week.
Oh,
but
God, yeah.
Oh, yeah. You'll love this one, though. I was listening, so their last show, episode 55, Katie was talking about their twins and how she can't leave them alone even for a second. It turns out one of them hit the other one with the coffee table. So picked up the coffee table and whacked and I think they're only a couple of years old, like they're young.
Oh, nightmare.
So put that together with, it turns out Bob works his ass off. So scheduling across the time zones for us to do that would be quite impossible.
Yeah, that would be, yeah.
But Bob come up with this brilliant idea. So rather than do a segment together, we could do a segment on a topic separately and just see what happens. So we pick a topic and we both talk about it.
Okay.
And see what happens.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So someone drops a topic and we talk about it. And being that it was Bob's idea, he gets to pick the topic,
right,
which this time is morticians.
Morticians.
Do you know anything about morticians?
I wouldn't like a friend that was a mortician,
No.
I don't think. Could you imagine pissing off a mortician friend? They know how to get rid of you, wouldn't they?
Exactly.
You'd really want to stay on their good side.
Do you know they've got their own trade magazine?
Oh my God,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
I wonder, what do they talk about? Like coffin size or types of funerals? Or
Well,
what's the in fashion of dying?
The only thing I know about the morticians trade magazine is that they, in the late 1800s, to get the name mortician, they run a competition because they were called embalmers. The magazine was the Embalmers Weekly or something like that, I don't know. But they run a competition. So mort comes from, that's Latin for death, that suits nicely. And they just put titian on the
Do you
end
reckon
of
there's
it.
like a mortician called Morticia?
There has
How
to
cool
be.
would that be?
Yeah.
Or unless they've got like a morticians and it's called Morticias.
Well, that's where they got her name from, for the Addams family.
Yeah, I know, but can you imagine if it was the other way around?
I've got a story about a mortician dodger.
Mortician dodger.
Yeah, so this is some bastard who won't die. It turns out, and this was in the news this week actually, they may have found the world's oldest man at 145 years old.
Oh my God.
So that's 1870 he was born. So he's lived over 3 centuries.
Oh my God.
Not only has he lived in a time before powered flight, he's lived in a time before powered automobiles.
Oh my God, he must be so fed up.
Yeah.
What must he think, eh?
Well, I'll tell you what he thinks in a minute because he told the world what he thinks. But
Mortician dodger.
he's outlived his siblings and his wife,
Oh,
which
that's
you'll
sad.
understand.
That
He's
is
had
sad.
4 wives in that time.
Oh my! I suppose he's had time to pack that in, hasn't he?
But he's also outlived his kids, all of his kids.
That is sad.
Yeah.
That is sad.
So you asked what he thinks about that. Now he lives in central Java, which is, that's not a first world place. He's not living anywhere in luxury, but he had an interview with one of the local news sources, and they said apparently he spends his time listening to the radio because he can no longer, his vision's not good enough to see the TV. And he says that his secret to a long life is patience.
Oh, dear God. Oh, God, yeah. You'd have to have a lot of patience, really, wouldn't you?
Anyway, he has one wish. All he wants to do is die. And the poor bucket, he just must be bored of it all now.
Is he relatively healthy still, apart from his sight?
He's not doing very well at all.
Is he not?
No, he's got to get spoon-fed, and he
that's
needs
not
care
much
all
of a
the time.
life, is it? Dear God. So the morticians aren't getting hold of this geezer quite yet?
Not yet.
Oh, dear God. Do you know, like, morticians, is there some kind of exam process? Like, is there like a professional course you can take?
Well, yeah, they do actually, and the reason I know this is because I just looked it up before, and there's actually a website. So Wiki Professional, you can go and find out everything that you need for a career. The first thing that I actually look at when I think about careers is how much they get paid.
Oh, talk to me. How much?
Well, depends where you are. In California, the average annual mean is, so California from this website to the highest, it's 67,000, nearly 68,000, which is a little bit higher than average of somebody with a college education in the US.
Right, okay.
The lowest is in Texas at 47,850. That's the average.
Right, okay.
But they do a degree course, and apparently, according to everything that I kind of read, it's more like, it's still in the US, it's more like a family business than
I was going to say,
here.
what you hear is it tends to be people stay within the family who get that job, that, you know, they know somebody in the family that they own the funeral home or whatever. And it's not something that a random person would just think, I want to grow up and be a mortician.
I can't imagine anybody not within that sphere would think, oh, that'd be a hot job.
Well, I wouldn't know whether you call it. Well, it depends if cremation would be a hot job, wouldn't it, I suppose.
That is a shit joke, Andrew.
Oh, I thought that was quite quick. Dun-dun. Here all week.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so... Yeah, they do as a degree course, and then they do a kind of apprenticeship, and then they're qualified to...
Do you know what, mate? Could you imagine having a bad day as a mortician? You'd
God.
seriously fuck up there, wouldn't you, on a bad day?
How could you fuck up?
Well, you could burn the wrong body.
Well, yeah.
So what if somebody wasn't meant to be cremated and you got the wrong message?
That's happened.
Or, say, for example, you get somebody to view the body and it's not there. I don't know. You could just seriously have a bad day, couldn't you?
You could.
You know, is that, like, I mean, what if you held the funeral, you buried somebody, only to come back to your workshop, your mortician workshop, to find that you'd actually just buried some geezer and the woman you were meant to bury is still waiting to... I don't know.
God.
And they're open casket. So how do you explain that?
Yeah.
You'd have to dig... I've got a whole big bad day story in my head. But there's big bucks in it, though. It's big money because, I mean, we look at the price of a tombstone and the different caskets you can get. And, you know, I mean, I'm pretty much...
There must be a lot of upselling.
Oh, God, yeah. I'm pretty much at the theory. You go on holiday with any extra money and just shove me in a wicker basket. That's fine. There's no I don't need any posh caskets or headstones.
When I go, I want the mortician to look at me and go, I don't know what the fuck to do with that. Whatever's left of me, just whatever.
Should we practice and show each other this is what I look like, dead faces? What about this one?
It's radio.
I wanted to see your reaction, though.
Oh, God. How do we make jokes about morticians?
Oh.
We're wrong.
I suppose they must have a sick sense of humour.
They would have to be.
And do you know what? They must have such a great outlook on life, which would be kind of a weird balance. But you think you're dealing with dead every day.
Yeah.
You know, your outlook on life must be quite good, I can
think of one part of the community that it would suit as a profession. Autistics.
Yeah.
You know, people with Asperger's who don't like... I'm not being silly now, but people who don't like that human interaction.
Yeah, sure.
It would actually be big. It's hard to be undelicate, but...
Yeah. Well, it's weird you should say that, actually, because I'm about to admit some really poor TV viewing choice.
Oh, no.
But I was watching Mob Wives, right? And one...
What? Hold on.
Right, and one of them actually owns a family are
There's a TV show called Mob Wives.
Basically, yeah, they're mobs, and it's some are in prison, and that, but their wives are on a reality TV show. Anyway, one of them's a distant relative of some, I don't know, Joey the what's it, I don't know, whatever name. Well, anyway, they run a funeral home, and she's teaching.
It's not called Swimming with the Fishes, is it?
No, it's not.
See, I can do shit jokes too.
She was trying to tell her boyfriend and introduce. He wants to get involved in the business, and she was kind of talking him through. And he goes, "Well," she goes, "First step, you're not going to get involved in this bit." She was in like the where all the caskets was. Said, "First step, answering the phone." He goes, "Well, surely you just say good morning." She goes, "No, because if somebody's ringing you, it's not a good morning." No. So they have a whole etiquette there. And if you have got autism, back to that point, you'd actually just follow the rule book. Your emotions, like if you came in a good mood one day, whistling, and you pick up the phone, "Morning," it's not, it's not really good, is it?
I won't mention names, but we've got a friend who just cannot see any negative outlook on life. Yeah,
she's very, very happy, and
oh my God,
she would struggle. Do you know what? I don't know. She might actually take on everybody's woes.
Oh yeah.
Could go the other way. You could end up a manic depressive, couldn't you?
Yeah.
So God, you'd have to have quite a fine balance dealing with people, wouldn't you, during that hard time?
God. Yeah. I don't think I've actually told you this story, but so when I was in the right, for the listeners, there's a long military sort of history between Andrea and I. We're both in the military, but completely at different times. So
senior service.
Fucking Navy. Anyway, in the army, the actual military, one of the bases. So the army still has carpet. Well, when I was in, we're talking between 1990 and 2000. We still had carpenters, and their sole military function was to build coffins.
Oh, really?
That was it. So you had to do a trade test each. I think we did ours every year. You'd sit and do a trade test, and part of their trade test was building coffins.
Oh, right. Oh, God.
So I guess if there's ever any need for professional coffin makers as a full-time employee, it would have to be military.
I don't know what's more depressing, the fact that you're going to get a standard army issue coffin, or the fact that you've got a job and that's your job.
What colour pine would you like, sir?
It comes in one size.
Yeah. But
you'd have to curl up and fit in it.
Yeah, and so this guy was posted as the carpenter to one of the bases I was on. It was actually the School of Health, so if you're going to need coffins anywhere,
something's gone seriously wrong.
Something's gone really wrong there. And
anyway, I thought you were going to dedicate your body to science.
Well, most of it will be, but if there's anything left, they always
skeleton.
they have parts. No. Skeletons can be used for all sorts. Yeah. So there was a school in the UK. It was a local school actually. It was one of the schools around here. Actually, have their science classroom skeleton was a human skeleton, and after it was a couple of 100 years old, the skeleton was, and they actually identified who it was. Yeah,
I know you can get the human skeletons.
Yeah,
because my yoga teacher's after a proper one.
Oh God, you can get them out of plastic. You could.
No, we have got a skeleton, but.
Yeah,
she's saying you can now get a human.
I don't think I'd want a human one. I don't know. It's still a bit freaky.
That's unlike you.
How do you mean?
No, that kind of thing doesn't normally bother you, I wouldn't have thought.
One of the reasons I never looked actually into having a medical career, apart from how long you have to study and probably didn't really have the aptitude for it, was I can't cut a body. I can't see a human bleed. I can butcher an animal, but I can't manage to look at a human bleed.
That's good to know that, actually. Yeah, that's good to know.
Anyway, I think that's about enough of morticians.
That's a good topic, that is.
That's a tough one.
That's one you want to delve. You want to delve further into that one. That's a good one, that is.
Yeah. Well, that's about enough out of me. I hope you enjoyed listening to this week's Skeptic Smash Talk. Don't forget to look out for new shows each Monday evening UK time, but there were a few stories that I couldn't fit into this show, so I'll either post another extra show this week or try and squeeze them into next week's show. If you want to keep in touch, you can follow and like the show on all the social networks that allow following and liking, and you can get all the contact information that you need from skepticsmashtalk.com. And if you did in fact enjoy the show, please take a moment to leave a review and the appropriate amount of stars on iTunes, where you can also find past and future episodes. But better still, if you really enjoyed the show, feel free to post any of the links and share all the information with your friends. Finally, if you want to hear your voice on the show, you can send me a voice memo. Just keep it short, about 45 seconds, and remember to be nice. All you need to do is record your message on your phone's voice memo app. You can then just email it to me from the email link on the skepticsmashtalk.com homepage. Finally, I hope to have some more videos up on YouTube soon, and this episode will also be available on YouTube tonight. So on behalf of myself and Andrea, thanks for listening, and until next time, this has been Skeptic Smash Talk.